From the comfort town of a sudden, bizarre disappearance in a room with blood everywhere. It tells you just how brutal the crime was. After the investigation, we finally locked on to this jungle killer, a strange man who lives among the tree. So, what exactly happened around him? Let's travel back to 2010 and piece the case together again. Vernon Mountain is in Ohio. In the middle of it, it's named to honor President George Washington's achievements. So the city is named after George Washington's estate, Vernon Mountain. It's a small community with lots of parks and woodland. The security is good, and the crime rate is very low. In 2010, the population was about 17,000. It's a quiet, livable city. And the case we're talking about today happened right here. Tina Herrmann is a single mother. She lives in the countryside of Vernon Mountain, Ohio, with her 2 kids. Her daughter, Sarah Maddenard, is already 13 and she's really pretty. Her son, Cody Maddenard, is 11 and looks a lot like her. Tina and the kids are like a mother and child pair. Even though Tina divorced her ex-husband and Larry, they're still good friends. Larry used to come by every weekend to see the kids, but after moving for work, contact gradually dropped. Tina works at a local Dairy Queen. She gets along well with her coworkers. But things get complicated with her new boyfriend, Reggie. They fight all the time. Tina is often bothered by it. She thinks maybe she should change her environments, so she plans to move. Her neighbor, Stephanie Sprang, helps her look for a place. Stephanie is 10 years older than Tina. She's the mother of 3 kids. They have a lot in common, and they're practically inseparable close friends. Everything was supposed to go in the direction they planned. As the children grew up, Tina felt things would only get better, but nobody expected a sudden disaster to ruin everything. On November 10, 2010, Wednesday is a work day. Tina was supposed to be at work. But at 4:00 p.m., it was time for her shift, and Tina still never showed up. Tina was known for being punctual. She never arrived late. Even if something came up, she would definitely call ahead. But this time, they couldn't reach her at all. It was really strange. After more than 2 hours, the manager called the police.
One of my employees did not show up for work this afternoon at 4 o'clock,
Okay.
which is totally uncharacteristic of her. I'm very concerned about her.
What's her name?
Her name is Tina Herrmann.
After the local police got the call, they arrived at Tina's place around 7 p.m. But the house was completely dark. There were clearly no officers inside. They knocked for a while. After confirming nobody was home, they left. Because the police thought it probably wasn't a big deal. Maybe the whole family had gone into town to eat and watch a movie. Maybe they'd be back later. But before long, it was already the next day and Tina's family still didn't show up. Even stranger, Tina's neighbor, Stephanie, also called the police. Her family said Stephanie hadn't been seen since yesterday afternoon, and they couldn't reach her by phone either. Clearly, it wasn't something like eating or watching a movie. The police knew something was wrong. Then school officials also sent word. Tina's 2 children, Sarah and Cody, were missing too. The situation underground was getting worse. Just as the police were about to go check Tina's house again, someone else called in. The caller was still Tina's manager. After he reported it last night, he still couldn't relax. This morning, very early, he drove to Tina's place. He found Tina's pickup truck was gone and nobody was home. He looked in through the window, and it just felt off. So he broke a window behind the house, climbed inside, and he looked. There was blood everywhere.
This is Deputy Something. I can help you.
Yes, this is Valerie Haythorne.
Uh-huh.
I called in last night about Tina Herrmann being missing.
Mm-hmm.
I am out at her house now. I just went in her home because I'm so worried about her. There is blood everywhere.
Police arrived immediately and inspected the scene. In Tina's house, blood stains and footprints covered the hallway, going back and forth between rooms. When they reached the bathroom, they were shocked by what they saw. Around the bathroom, everything was crimson, including inside. The whole place was soaked in blood, with obvious footprints stained with blood as well. There were blood-stained footprints, very clear. This was a particularly vicious murder. The 4 people had already met with disaster. They were missing no traces at all. Strange evidence, where did the rest go? The police set up a large search nearby. Since there were so many woods around the area, it was very difficult to search. After locals heard the news, many people joined the search team. But no matter how hard they searched, they still found not a single trace of the 4 missing people. And while they searched, the police also needed to solve the case as soon as possible. Naturally, Tina's house, the crime scene, became a key focus. The police found items inside the house, gloves, bleach, and more. It seemed someone wanted to erase evidence, but for some reason, they were later abandoned. In the kitchen, there were 2 bags of purchased items, judging from what was shown on the receipts. The purchase time was around noon. There were also plenty of bloodstains in the garage. But there was one smaller bloodstained footprint from a pair of Air shoes, and the police found those shoes in Sarah's room. So the officers suspected Sarah left wearing those shoes and she may still be alive. Also, Tina's car was gone. The garage door had damage, and based on the marks, the damage had been there for a while. Finally, the police found a newly bought waterproof tarp and a large trash bag. They didn't have the receipt, but the packaging made it clear it was bought at Walmart. Based on all that, the police roughly inferred the process. There were no signs of forced entry into the house. The killer most likely slipped in through the damaged garage door. Around noon, Tina came home from shopping and happened to run into the killer. So before she had time to deal with it, the purchased items were met with disaster. Later, Tina's 2 children, Sarah and Cody, came home too, and the killer ran into them as well. He moved straight into violence. Sarah probably was quick and managed to escape through the garage. As for the missing neighbor, Stephanie, the police believed she had a close relationship with Tina. Maybe when Stephanie came over this afternoon to chat, she encountered the killer and met with disaster. Usually in cases like this, one party is the victim, and the other has motive and suspicion. So the police went to Tina's boyfriend. Greg said that on the 10th morning, before it was even light, he left to work. And he didn't come home the next day either, so he didn't know what happened at all. It sounded like a perfect coincidence. But after investigation, the police found that what Greg said was true. Several co-workers could testify for him he had an alibi, so his suspicion was cleared. Next, the police focused on the tarp and the large trash bag, because ordinary households wouldn't buy these kinds unless it was to handle the body. From the nearby Walmart security footage, they quickly found the person who bought the tarp and the trash bags. Unfortunately, the image was blurry. All they could make out was a young, tall, thin man. He drove a silver Toyota Yaris. Sadly, even the license plate was extremely unclear, so they couldn't read it at all. It was too blurry to identify. At the same time, another team of police found his pickup truck about 10 kilometers from Tina's home. The truck looked pretty clean. Inside the truck bed, there were 2 empty gas cylinders, and right next to it was a man who happened to be there in a Toyota Yaris. The police asked if he had seen who was driving the pickup. The man said no, he was just waiting nearby for his girlfriend. Then the officers began checking all Toyota Yaris owners in the nearby community. As they narrowed it down, one person entered the police's field of view. The clothes in his driver's license photo were the same as the suspect's clothes caught on camera, and his face looked basically similar too. He became the #1 suspect, Matthew Hoffman, 30 years old, born November 1, 1980 in Ohio's Sprang Mountain. There wasn't much recorded about his childhood, only that he looked pretty decent. In August 2000, at age 20, Matthew broke into a house in Colorado. Then, to cover up his crime, he even set the house on fire so the flames spread to nearby homes, eventually causing losses of about $2 million. After Matthew was caught, he was convicted of arson, burglary, and theft, and got an 8-year prison sentence. In prison, Matthew did well. He served only 6 years before being released. After getting out, Matthew moved back to Sprang Mountain in Ohio. He even bought a condo, and his girlfriend and son lived with him. Later, he found a job trimming trees. He liked it a lot, because he loved trees. Even though he wasn't very social with coworkers, his boss appreciated him. He said the guy was good, didn't talk much, just worked. Matthew's neighbors said he was a good kid. He often helped with picking up and dropping off neighbors' children. People saw him as helpful. But all of that changed soon after. First, Matthew lost his job. Because his boss discovered he had been hiding his criminal record, he was fired. Unemployed, Matthew didn't look for work again, he just lived on unemployment benefits. 2010, everything suddenly changed. The helpful Matthew turned very strange, and one knew what had changed. His neighbors often saw him climb into trees in the yard, just sitting there alone, staring blankly for hours. He even tied a hammock to a tree. Sometimes he would lie in the hammock. Besides going back and forth around the yard's trees, he would also often go into nearby woods collecting leaves. He liked being alone in the woods, sometimes for half a day, even all day. Sometimes he would camp overnight inside the woods. In short, Matthew was obsessed with trees and leaves. He was obsessed to the point of going crazy, especially after losing his job. Besides that, he placed many traps in his own yard to catch squirrels. He didn't do it for fun. He cooked and ate most of the squirrels he caught. In his girlfriend's eyes, squirrels were so cute, how could he eat squirrels? This made his girlfriend feel increasingly sick and uneasy. Matthew wasn't like this before. In the end, he left with the kids and the police found his girlfriend too. He told police that Matthew used his hands to choke his neck and nearly strangled him to death. On November 14, 4 days after the disappearance, the police rushed to Matthew's house. That's right, they kicked the door in, threw a flashbang into the room, and rushed inside. In the living room, the police controlled Matthew, who had just been startled awake. He looked completely stunned, not knowing what was happening. Matthew's home was arranged in a very strange way. The living room floor was piled with thick leaves. The bathroom was neat and tidy, filled with bags of leaves. In the kitchen, there were over 100 bags worth of leaves. On the walls too, there were some strange graffiti. After searching the whole house, they found no trace of the missing 4 people. But unexpectedly, the police found an entrance to a basement. The pitch-black basement, they finally found Sarah, who was still alive. Her feet were tied up, she was curled up in a bundle of blankets, and around her, and even under the blankets, there were leaves everywhere. At this point, it was certain that Matthew was the killer, but whether the other 3 were alive remained unknown. Next, the police interrogated Matthew to find the other 3 people. The police thought the interrogation would go smoothly, since Matthew looked relatively honest, but in reality, it was far from smooth. Matthew wouldn't say a word no matter what. No matter how they asked, Matthew stayed completely still. In interrogation records, you could see, if you weren't watching his Adam's apple and the swallowing movement, you wouldn't even know whether he was still breathing. One officer said that after decades on the job, they'd never seen a suspect like this, not a single response, not even after the officers continued insisting. Matthew's only response was to gesture that his heart was split, meaning his heart was broken. That was it. Police were anxious to get clues about the other 3 from his mouth, but obviously, Matthew wasn't going to tell them. In the end, the police changed tactics and decided to go the soft and emotional route, asking him questions through a female officer. They even bought him pizza so he could eat while he talked. After all, Matthew really hadn't eaten in a long time. This trick actually worked. He said he could tell everything, but there was one condition. He would pretend to run away so the police would shoot him dead. Obviously, the police couldn't agree to that. So after a few days of deadlock, the police prepared to make a deal with Matthew. If Matthew told them where the other 3 were, the police wouldn't give him the death penalty. At most, it would be life in prison. Faced with such a tempting condition, Matthew agreed. He said the other 3 were already dead. And as for where he hid their bodies, even if the police tried to rack their brains, they still wouldn't be able to find it. In a nearby nature reserve, full of big trees, one tree about 18 meters tall was special. From the outside, everything looked normal, but in reality, the tree was sick. A huge hole had rotted out in the middle. Matthew used pulleys and ropes to place the bodies of Tina, Stephanie, and Cody carefully through the Y-shaped branches into the hollow of the tree, including Tina's dog. Because the hollow was high and the space was small, the police had no choice but to cut open a new hole. Then finally, they could move the bodies out. It has to be said, if Matthew didn't admit it on his own, the police might never have found where the 3 victims were. Then Matthew also explained his full method. He said he camped in the woods. After he saw Tina's family leave, he sneaked into the house through the garage. His original goal was just to steal, not to hurt anyone. But the police didn't believe that, because Matthew's home had receipts for buying knives, gloves, tape, and more. And when he dismembered the victims, he used that knife he had bought. If it was only theft, why bring a knife everywhere? Putting together the clues they found, and Matthew's limited testimony later, the police were able to reconstruct his actions. He camped across the woods from Tina's house. In fact, he had been camping there for several days already. When he saw Tina's family all go out, he snuck into the house. He thought they wouldn't come back until very late. But at midday, Tina suddenly returned. And he caught her right there. During the fight, he killed her. Later, neighbor Stephanie came over to find Tina. She saw the blood in the house, so he attacked her again. Even Tina's dog couldn't escape his violence. Then he dragged the 2 people to the bathroom, preparing to dismember them. At that time, Tina's 2 kids came back from school. His murderous intent returned again, but when he saw 13-year-old Sarah moving toward him, he covered her eyes and shut her into another room. Then, in his own bathroom, he dealt with the 3 victims. Sarah didn't know what was happening. She thought the stranger had only killed the dog at their house. In the end, Matthew assaulted Sarah in his own basement. In Matthew's statement, he tried to portray himself as a kind person. He said he was nice to Sarah and that he watched movies with her and played video games with her. Then he fed Sarah a hamburger. Even if the police hadn't come, he planned to release Sarah, trying to build a good image of himself. But in fact, he didn't do any of that. In court, Matthew was very calm. He admitted to all 10 counts. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. After conviction, Matthew made a public statement through his lawyer. It was just random. It was just a burglary. I didn't know those people, and I never planned to harm anyone. But Sarah's father, Larry, said he didn't believe Matthew at all. He was a monster, the closest thing to the devil that Larry had ever seen. Matthew admitted guilt, but he refused to talk, and even the clues he did give were very limited, so no one knows his motive. A psychologist said Matthew's obsession with leaves and trees showed signs of mental illness and delusions. That also explains why he hid the victims in the trees he was familiar with. Of course, that doesn't excuse the crimes he committed. In prison, Matthew behaved the same as during the interrogation. He looked very obedient, so other inmates bullied him. To prevent accidents, he became a protected target in prison. After the case was settled, the local Dairy Queen company even organized a fundraising event. They donated all the money to Sarah and Stephanie's families, hoping to help them out a little. As for Sarah, the only survivor in this tragedy, the 13-year-old girl suffering something this brutal, how painful that must be. Outsiders can hardly imagine. After psychological therapy, Sarah overcame the huge pressure, returned to normal life, and even did interviews with her father. So tell us why you wanted to be here this morning, and what did you want to say? Let people know how I survived, why he did it, the whole mess with her father's help. Sarah even wrote a book about her experience. It's called A Girl Among the Leaves. The book details everything that happened to her and how she overcame her difficulties and how her life unfolded into something new. Sarah hopes that in the future she can become a baseball player and wants to study at her dream school in Florida. Later, the University of Florida Alumni Association offered her a scholarship. When she put on the clothes prepared by the alumni and smiled, it was really hard not to be moved.